Well, today could have gone better. Remember how I've been keeping an eye on my engine temperatures? A couple of little wonky incidents of things getting hot briefly and then cooling right back down. It got a lot worse today. As I was leaving Dawson Creek, trying to make my way pretty far south, I was planning another 500-600 kilometer day down towards Jasper. The road from Dawson Creek to Grand Prairie, every single time I throttled down to try to get to 80 kilometers on a 100 kilometer speed limit road, the temperature shot up. I just couldn't even put my foot on the gas without things getting hot. More times than I'm comfortable with, the needle got very close to the red, and what I really don't want to do here is go into the red, totally overheat the engine, blow a head gasket, do damage to the head. And I'm just at a loss for what's going on. Water pump's working. I've got heat coming out the heater. Radiator is full. I let it cool down today and pulled the cap off. There's coolant in there. There's no signs of leaks. I've got no coolant leaking anywhere. Fan clutch is working. So that brings me here. I'm in Dawson. No, I'm not in Dawson. I'm in Grand Prairie, Alberta. Actually a cool little town. I am so lucky it's a Saturday. And because I'm at a loss for what's going on, I started searching for shops that could maybe help me. I found an incredible shop here in Grand Prairie. They were open on a Saturday. It's 8 p.m. now. They stayed there with me, talking through the issue, checking a couple of things. Made a plan for tomorrow to try a bunch of diagnostic stuff, try a bunch of maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that stuff, and we'll see where it gets us. The two guys at the shop are great. Super helpful Toyota enthusiasts. The guy that owns the shop has a pretty built 4Runner and knows what he's talking about. He's got a mechanic that he works with that spent 5 years or so in Saudi Arabia working on Land Cruisers. So I feel like we're going to be able to get to the bottom of this. I also feel like I'm sort of at my wit's end with this, and starting to really think about what I want this trip to look like. Do I want the excitement of the trip to come from issue after issue with the Troopy, or do I want the excitement of this trip to come from the places I'm seeing and the people I'm meeting and the things I'm getting to do? Because right now, all of the excitement is coming from these white knuckle drives, watching my temperature gauge. And it's getting kind of old. But luckily right here in the middle of town, there's another of these Rotary Club RV parks. This one is quite expensive, but they had space for me. A small site with limited hookups, and I don't need hookups. I'm fully self-contained, but you got to pay for them even if you don't use them. $50 Canadian a night, but it's worth it to be able to be. I'm 5 minutes away from the shop, and we've got a plan for tomorrow morning. So right now, all that's left to do is eat some dinner, enjoy the rest of the evening, get on the computer, do some research, see if anyone has had similar issues, come up with a solution for them, and keep hoping. You might be getting bored of seeing me make the same exact meal every single day, but what can I say? It's simple, I don't have to do any dishes. It's tasty, it's delicious, and it fills me up. Today I've also got a clementine and an applesauce. I'm going to start the morning off by running to the parts store. I think today at the shop is going to be a lot of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Last night, I did what anyone in my situation would do. I got on the forums, I went to I Hate Mud, and I sent out a call for help. I explained the situation. One reply that came in that I hadn't thought about yet was actually checking out the temp sender unit, the water gauge temperature sensor, and the entire wiring. It's just a one wire harness, I think. And that thought really hadn't crossed my mind yet. So maybe while I'm at the parts store, I'll look for a replacement temp sender. So my thinking on that is that I know under the hood a lot of the wiring is janky, and I remember especially when I did the thermostat housing and the thermostat replacement, that the temperature sender and the wire coming from it were pretty questionable looking. So maybe it's a bad connection at some point along the way where when you really throttle down it goes wonky. Maybe it's like a bad ground or something. Maybe the temp sensor itself is just not functioning properly anymore. Like I don't know at this point if I can trust any of the temperatures on my temperature gauge. So that's one avenue for us to look in today. Let's get the Troopy packed up, fired up, and get over to a parts store. So one thing we're trying is to improve airflow to the radiator. To do that, we went ahead and pulled off my already non-functioning AC components. I'll take those, and at some point I'll reinstall them and get them recharged. But when we did the engine swap, we discharged all the Freon, and it just was non-functioning. So maybe there we'll have better airflow to the radiator. Next, we're gonna flush the radiator, refill it, and see where that takes us. Well, after about a full day's work trying to diagnose the issue and trying a bunch of things, we ended up doing a couple of things. First, we pulled the AC condenser off the front of the radiator. Whether or not we actually needed to do that, I'm not sure, but it was already emptied and there was no harm in pulling it to try to increase airflow here. So we did that. I've got the components in the back of the Troopy now. And then the other thing we did was a flush and fill of the radiator. We back flushed the heater core, and even though I did this when I first did the cooling system, there was a ton of sediment and crap that came out. So much so that I really believe that was probably what was impacting my temperatures. So after doing that, I took it on a test drive, half an hour up and down the highway, really hammering it in third gear up climbs, and fifth gear cruising at 90 kilometers an hour, and my temperature stayed steady. They rose to where I'm used to them rising to, and then they just held there through everything I did. So I'm feeling really confident now. Not confident enough to stray too far away from civilization, but confident enough to get home. So I think the plan now, instead of going through Icefields Parkway and seeing Jasper and Banff as much as I'd love to, I just know climbing those mountains and dealing with sort of the lack of services on some of those stretches is a little too scary for me to be comfortable. Instead, I'm going to make a big loop through Alberta. I'm going to head from Grand Prairie, where I'm at now, over to Edmonton, straight down to Calgary, and then I'm within spitting distance of the border and can cross either in Montana or Idaho and hopefully make it home without too many issues. Well, the relief from my overheating issues was short-lived. I made it about an hour down the road outside of Grand Prairie on my way towards Edmonton, and things are struggling again. It'll hold steady for a while, and without any rhyme or reason, we'll start to shoot up, and I do what I always do. I get into neutral, get to the side of the road, let things cool down. It hasn't been so bad today. It's only happened twice in maybe the last 15 minutes. It hasn't hit the red at all, but it has climbed awfully close, well over halfway, 3/4 even, and I'm just at a loss. Maybe flushing the radiator, flushing the cooling system got a lot of sediment out, but maybe not all of it. Maybe there's still an air bubble in there somewhere. This is just not the kind of issue I want to be dealing with. It's making it hard to make progress because I just don't know when it's going to strike and when things are going to spike. I'm about 3 hours still from Edmonton, and I suppose we'll just try to take it easy. See, it's just on idle. It just shot up. I'm sitting here idling with the heater off so that you can hear me, and it started to shoot up right there. Geez, I don't know what's going on. This is crazy. Well, after all that, it looks like the issue is probably electrical. We bought an aftermarket gauge from Bosch with an aftermarket temperature sensor. Couldn't find one in town that fit the thermostat housing where the temperature sensor from Toyota actually goes. So we had to make a bunch of little adapters. Right in there you can see we've got this M16 to 1/4 inch down to 1/8 inch for the temperature sensor. And after getting that in there, the gauge is showing 190. It's not fluctuating at all. Up hills, pegging the throttle. We're holding steady. I did about 45 minutes of driving, pretty hard driving, and 0 temperature fluctuations at all. Feel kind of like an idiot because, of course, the last thing I thought of was an electrical issue. But it makes sense now looking at the state of the wiring in here, right? This was the one wire from my original temperature sensor, and it's all taped up, it's all crispy from being 32 years old. So now I think I've got some confidence that we weren't overheating. We were just seeing changes in the electrical resistance coming from that temperature sensor and being shown on the gauge, which is probably why it was so intermittent with no rhyme or reason. Of course, by the time we've wrapped up, it's 5 o'clock. So, one more night in Grand Prairie, and then we'll make progress tomorrow. We're gonna celebrate getting fixed today with some Costco steaks right on the grill at the best shop in all of Grand Prairie. First Auto Garage with the best guys. So I'm back at the Rotary RV Park here in Grand Prairie for the 3rd night, unexpectedly. I thought 1 night, then I thought 2 nights. Now I'm here for the 3rd night. But I'm very confident this time that tomorrow is the day we make it to Calgary. And I gotta tell you, this is one of the things about being on the road full time. While on the one hand, being here for 3 days when I thought it would just be a quick overnight could be seen as a negative. The positive thing here is just the people that you meet. Getting to hang out with Ray and Vince at First Auto Garage for the last 3 days has just been such a highlight of this trip getting out of Canada. Those guys are the absolute best. To celebrate what we think is fixing the cooling system on the truck finally by realizing that it was either the sensor or the gauge, we grilled out, we had steaks, we had beers, and getting to do that stuff with people that you've just met, making friends on the road. I feel like I'm part of the shop family now, and it's just such a great feeling. So tonight's going to be a good night. We're going to get some good sleep. I'm gassed up. I'm fully supplied. I'm ready to make it to Calgary. And now, with a brand new temperature sensor and a brand new temperature gauge, I'm confident that we actually will make it to Calgary. So these situations are what you make of them, you know? And I think that putting good out into the world, getting good back, that's what it's all about. So I couldn't be happier right now. We'll pick you up in the morning, and I promise you, we'll be making it to Calgary. Maybe I shouldn't promise that given how my luck has been, but I'm pretty confident we'll do it this time. So stick around. Well, good morning. We are all packed up. I got a shower in this morning. And today is the day that we're hopefully making it out of Grand Prairie. Gonna hit Edmonton, gonna hit Calgary. Let's just hope the Land Cruiser gods are on our side and things go smoothly. Before we take off, I'm gonna give the engine bay a once over, check for any coolant leaks. If I see anything, maybe top off, assess the situation. Not expecting any leaks, but better to do a little pre-flight check and be safe than sorry. That looks good and dry. I was really only worried about this new temperature sensor because we've got an adapter to a bushing to the actual temperature sensor, and it seems like an area that could be prone for leaks, but yeah, that's nice and dry. Well, we're about 300 kilometers into our drive today on our way to Edmonton, and the Troopy is doing fantastic. The temperature is holding steady right at 190, which is exactly what I would expect. That's the temperature that my thermostat opens at, and it's just such a relief to have numbers on a gauge, first of all, numbers that match up with what I expect, second of all, and then to have it holding steady while I'm climbing hills, while I'm, running down in fifth gear. We're holding a pretty steady 90 kilometer per hour drive here. The Land Cruiser gods and luck is finally back on my side here. It kind of makes me feel a little bit silly that I've spent so much time on this drive white knuckle and anxious about my engine temps because when I think about the times that I pulled over because things started to get hot, other than the gauge, I had no evidence that things were getting hot. There was no smoke, no boiling off from my overflow, and so hindsight, I guess, is 2020. But the idea that this was an electrical issue with the sensor or the gauge itself just feels like such a simple solution with all of the evidence in place, you know? So I am so glad that I took the extra time in Grand Prairie. So glad that I had the help of the awesome shop there to get this aftermarket gauge and temperature sensor installed so that I can just drive with so much more confidence. We're at a little side of the highway rest stop here. I'm gonna grab a little bit of a snack. I've got a couple of cuties I'm gonna eat, and then a cheese and pepperoni stick. It's about lunchtime. We're coming up on a quarter afternoon right now. And then quickly we're gonna get back on the road and make it to Edmonton. And it's a huge relief to finally be making progress like this. So we'll get back to it here shortly. Well, after a very long day of driving, I think it was just over 700 kilometers, we made it from Grand Prairie to Calgary, and we found camp here on the west side of town at a place called McLean Creek. And it's a pretty gorgeous spot. Lots of trees. It feels way different than northern Alberta, even just as you're driving in. And the other interesting thing is that Calgary got snow last week. So there's a good amount of snow on the ground here piled up and just covering the forest beyond over here, back there in through the trees. It's just snow-covered ground. It's really beautiful. It makes it a lot colder than it has been the last couple of days. I think tonight is going to be a chilly one. It was a long day of driving. It's about 8 o'clock in the evening right now, and I need to eat some dinner, and then I'm probably going to crash because tomorrow's going to be another long day of driving as well. The winds here in Alberta are something else. In northern Alberta, up near Grand Prairie and Edmonton, it's flat plains and the wind just rips through there, and it has not let up as I got south into Calgary. If you thought the Troopy was slow, try driving into a serious Alberta headwind. It really takes its toll on you. But the truck did great. We managed to cruise all the way down to Calgary through the wind and the rain. No temperature issues. Running along solid 90 kilometers an hour. And I still am just so ecstatic that I feel like I can finally drive the truck stress-free a little bit. It's still an old truck, and I'm still listening to every single noise, paying attention to every new smell that comes in through the open window. But for the first time in a long time, I am a little bit more relaxed while I'm driving, and that feels absolutely incredible. Well, the rain really picked up outside, so we've retreated into the Alu cab to eat our dinner. It's a sandwich wrap like usual, a clementine because vitamins are important. But to celebrate making it to Calgary and just how good the Troopy is doing, we're treating ourselves to some dessert tonight. We've got a coffee crisp to wash it all down with, because this really is the best candy bar you can get, and it is a shame that we can't get them in America. I'm gonna have to stock up before I cross the border. Well, good morning, everyone. It was a chilly night here in Calgary. It definitely got into the low 30s, close to zero. We stayed warm enough in the camper. It wasn't super comfortable, but it was survivable. So that's a good thing. Now, the even better thing is that we're getting an early start because today is the day. We're going to make it to the border, back into the US, and be that much closer to home. So we'll get camp all packed up, we'll get the truck fired up, and then we'll start laying down some miles. Well, we made it through southern Alberta, west, back into British Columbia. The drive through Alberta sure was interesting. It was a lot like being in the foothills of California at the base of the Sierra Nevadas. Big sweeping mountain ranges off to the side, just driving through rolling hills. Really, really beautiful scenery. And now that we're back into British Columbia, we're right in the thick of it, going over mountains, around mountains, trying to get to the border with Idaho. Well, sometimes you're driving by and see something on the side of the road that you just have to pull over for, and this is one of them. I'm just south of Cranbrook in BC, very close to the US border, and I saw this awesome car lot of vintage 4x4s. They're closed right now, but I gotta get out and walk around and take a closer look. It's definitely worth stopping to take a peek at. They have some incredible vehicles on their lot. It's called Muertes Motors. I think that's how you pronounce it. I would be really interested in how much they want for some of these. It's clear they need some work, but you know I love a good project. Well, after nearly 3,000 kilometers across Canada, we are finally back in the good old US of A. It's been an amazing trip so far, and it just feels so good to be back in the Troopy. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. It makes me so happy to be back to it and being able to share this journey that I'm on with you all, and I appreciate the support more than you know. If you like what I'm doing and want to help keep me and the Troopy on the road, one of the best ways to support is to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can also consider joining the channel as a member. It's no obligation, but the support goes a long way. As always, I appreciate you being here, and we'll catch you on the next one.